Now everybody's smiling. Everybody got the same tapered afro. Everybody got locks. Everybody got braids. Everybody got tats. Everybody shoots threes. There's no identity. The friendliness is part of the reason. Everybody's cool. You would never see in the 90s the Knicks and the Bulls, smiling at each other. It felt personal. It felt like it was on site if these guys saw each other on the street. And sometimes it was. Give me 90s basketball. There was nothing wrong with it. Welcome back to the channel. This is Can I Be Ernest, back with another video. For those of you who are new to the channel, when I'm not making videos of interest, I'm usually doing some type of commentary. Why? Because everyone else does. But I want to talk about a hot topic right now, which is the state of the NBA. Right now, the NBA is experiencing an all-time low in ratings. Or I don't want to say an all-time low, but they're experiencing a severe decline in their ratings, their viewership. A lot of fans, a lot of media types are just turned off completely. And I just feel like I'm knowledge on enough on this sport to add my 2 cents. As somebody who grew up playing basketball, I played baseball and basketball primarily through my, life up until like my late teens, early 20s. I played basketball recreationally in my 20s, but sometime in my teens, I took it seriously. I had a scholarship offered to a Division II school that I turned down. That's a story for another day. But I played basketball for a long time. And I got a chance, thankfully, to watch the heyday of the NBA. Anyone from the Gen X era or boomers might think the 60s were better. I disagree. Late 80s, throughout the 90s and early 2000s, the NBA was just everything. Everything. It gave you everything. The late 80s gave you the physicality and some of the superstar names. The 90s gave you more flair with young stars and just, whatever. And the 2000s was just like a combination of both. You had some old guys still in there. You had the young guys doing their thing. You had the Trends, the Iversons, the Kobe. It was just everything. And then it just stopped. It stopped right when LeBron got here. I said what I said. So the 80s and the 90s to me were the pinnacle of the NBA, and it will never reach that again. But it's not because of what you think. My reasons of believing that are the following. The NBA is going through an identity crisis. Forget the exceedingly bad play that we see night in, night out. And I don't watch the NBA. I just catch highlights. I can't watch a game anymore. I'm done watching 143, 138 games with 100 3-pointers. I'm just not doing it anymore. But they're going through an identity crisis. When you think of the talent from the 80s, the Magic, the Birds, the Isaiah Thomases of the world, MJ, Ewing, Malone, Stockton. When you think of those guys, Hakeem Olajuwon, of course, the NBA was less friendlier back then as far as like the players just weren't buddy and all that stuff. There was more competition. But you could kind of identify player with team. Like you knew who Patrick Ewing was. You knew if you were an NBA fan, you knew he was a Knick. You just knew it. Once you heard the name, you could kind of put the name to the location. You knew Magic, LA. You knew Bird was in Boston. Isaiah, Pistons with the Bad Boys. Clyde Drexler, Portland. You would collect cards. You would know. Players stay with the same team for 5-10 years. Longer than that. And then in the 90s, the style of play changed and ratings were at an all-time high. People like to say that they didn't enjoy these low-scoring games back in the 90s and the hard defense. But we did. We did. Nobody wanted to see scores in the hundreds. Nobody wanted to see 130, 125. That means there was no defense. So you wanted to watch a game where the intensity was high and every point counted and you rooted for your team hardcore. You just wanted to see close-knit games. But again, in the 90s, we got to see a lot of the mix of young and old. The style of play was great. Whether it was butcher basketball or not, it seemed to me that the NBA was everything. We remember the NBA on NBC theme song. Marv Albert, Bob Costas. It was just different, man. It was just different times. This is not like an old head complaining about the youth. There's some talented guys that I do like. But the NBA as a whole was admirable. And there was an identity. Everyone didn't look alike. The first time I saw somebody with locks in the NBA was J.R. Reed and Purvis Ellison. There were two guys with locks in their hair. You watch the NBA now, everyone has locks. In the NBA in the 90s, the bald head was a thing. It wasn't just because guys were losing their hair. Guys would intentionally cut their hair bald that can grow their hair. I'm a Knicks fan. I grew up a Knicks fan. Every playoff time, the Knicks would shave their head bald. Charles Oakley, guys like John Starks and other players. They would shave their hair bald and just grow their hair in the offseason and have their regular hot top fades. So a lot of people think people were just balding in the 90s. No, people would cut their hair because that was the in look. That was the Jordan look. You know, that was the Charles Barkley look. Guys that couldn't grow hair, but they made it look cool. Tupac, you know, in the whole, you know, pop culture world. So the bald head in the 90s is what the tapered fro and locks are today, or cornrows are today. That's all. But there was identity. Only a few players took certain looks. Larry Johnson with the part in his head in the 90s. Sean Kemp with the little Gumby hairstyle where, you know, it looked like he brushed it, but he also picked it up. Pat Ewing with the high top fade. Guys with their fades and the brush cuts. Everyone had different looks. Think about tattoos. Dennis Rodman was the first guy to really take it to the stratosphere with tattoos. There were other players. Scottie Pippen had a little tat here, and there was a couple guys, but tattoos weren't what they are now. You saw a handful of guys with tattoos. You saw a handful of guys with their own look, their own hairstyle. Jordan wore his shorts to his knees when it wasn't cool. You know, the Bulls in the early 90s wore long shorts. They didn't do what Chris Webber and the Michigan team in the NCAA did, but they wore long shorts. But everyone else kind of wore their shorts high. So it was just like everyone was like distinct. They had their own thing. Late 90s, here comes Iverson and Sprewell with the braids, zigzags, and all that stuff. Nobody else was doing it. Then they started to copy. So you started seeing more copycats. But Sprewell and Iverson were the guys, the pioneers, right? And of course, Iverson with his tattoos, Marbury with his tattoos, so on and so forth. There were a select few of players who had their own look, who had their own style of play, and select teams that had their identity as well. You had your teams that ran up and down the floor, and then you had your specialized teams that played by the book, where pass first and light on the 3-point shot. And then you had teams like the Knicks that were defensive minded. The Miami Heat, defensive minded. Think about the NBA in the 2020s, the 2010s, 2020s. Once Steph Curry started doing his thing, everybody copied. James Harden started shooting threes, and the rest of the league just went on fire. There's no identity. There's no team that you watch right now and you're like, oh man, I love their tenacity. They play great defense. They have great ball movement. You know, who does no-look passes? No one does a no-look pass anymore. There's guys running on 3-on-1 fast breaks, opting for the 3-point shot. 3-on-1 fast break. If you took a shot in a 3-on-1 fast break back in the day, you were benched. You were getting yelled at by your coach, and you were benched. 3-on-1 means you have numbers. So get to the basket. But there's guys now on 3-on-1 where you got a shooter jumping to the arc, and somebody's going to dish it off and get the 3 when he's right near the rim. The league has no identity, man. It's done. Everyone looks the same. Everyone plays the same. That's the problem. On top, you know, people like to say it's because, you know, the NBA got a little too woke, you know, with the whole social injustice thing. And I just don't think that's the reason the ratings are bad. I didn't get upset because players wanted to protest. That's not why I stopped watching the league. I stopped watching the league because sinners start bringing the ball up the court. Can you imagine Pat Ewing bringing the ball up the court in the 90s? Or David Robinson? No one did that. Jokic, I let him live because he's a great, you know, passer. He's a pass first guy. But I don't want to see Joel Embiid and all these guys play like point guards. That's the issue. There's no more positions. It's a positionless league. When centers started bringing the ball up the floor, my eyebrow went up. Then centers started shooting threes. Some players started doing it because they wanted to expand their careers, so they knew post play wasn't the same. So you couldn't get in the paint and start posting up and posting up and posting up. That style of play was gone. So if you wanted to last in the league and keep making money, you had to, extend your game a bit. So I get when a couple guys started to learn how to shoot threes and become inside out players. But when 3/4 of your centers are just shooting threes and just hanging on the arc, that's whack. That's lame. Everybody can't be Steph. See, when Jordan played, not everybody tried to be Jordan. Some people tried to look like him. Kobe was the first guy that played like him, like neck and neck, the same kind of style. But most guys didn't play like him. The NBA was trying to find the next Jordan. So they thought Penny and Grant Hill and those guys didn't play like Jordan, though. The league just wanted to find the next Jordan. When Iverson came to the league with the crossover and all that stuff, there were guys doing crossovers before Jordan. There was Tim Hardaway. But when Iverson did it and made it more street, you saw a couple guys doing it, but not everybody. But when Steph Curry started shooting from half court, everybody wanted to shoot from half court. Why did it change? Why did it evolve? Why did it change to that? Why were only a handful of players copying the trends of the older decades? But when Steph started becoming this phenomenon, everyone started to try to copy him. I'm confused. And then the league just kind of got watered down. The analytics, all that. So it's not about social injustice, in my opinion. I don't think anyone should be at home disgruntled because a player wanted to protest police. That's LeBron is probably part of the reason the league is just blah. The friendliness is part of the reason. Everybody's cool. You would never see in the 90s the Knicks and the Bulls, smiling at each other. It felt personal. It felt like it was on site if these guys saw each other on the street. And sometimes it was. You never thought the Knicks and the Heat were going to be buddies. Now everybody's smiling. Everybody got the same tapered afro. Everybody got locks. Everybody got braids. Everybody got tats. Everybody shoots threes. There's no identity. That's the problem with today's NBA. They're sabotaging their own league. And they've got to fix it fast because as somebody who grew up collecting basketball cards, watching every game, wearing jerseys, going to a couple games, I haven't watched a full NBA game this season at all. Didn't watch the NBA Cup, won't watch the All-Star game. I'm done. It doesn't intrigue me. It doesn't excite me. That doesn't mean you can't watch it, but I'm one of those fans that remembers the old school, and it's not the same. And I don't need it to go back to the 70s and the slow pace. And no, give me 90s basketball. There was nothing wrong with it. The league was at an all-time high. You want to see more scoring? Why? Do you want to see every team score in the hundreds? Every night, if you look at the bottom line on ESPN, every team has 100+ points. Every team. No one plays defense. The Euro step, the little step back three, is the amount of traveling that happens. The league needs a revamping. So Adam Silver should take a lot of heat, but so should these teams and these analytic guru nerds who just are chasing stats. Basketball was fine the way it was.